Um, my name is D.A. Powell. Welcome to a Saturday afternoon feast of words with Rabih Alameddine and Anissa Helou. This is our last regular event of the school term, and I thought it would be nice, since we are going into the holiday season, to have something to close out the year that feels celebratory. Many people are struggling to decide whether they are going to spend the holidays with family or distanced from family. I think it's important to make every holiday special, no matter who you're with. And so I thought it would be fun to talk with two old friends who have spent time traveling, tasting food around the world, and who are writers. And I love having writers that write all kinds of things. Rabih is a novelist and a short story writer. He has a short story collection called Perv, which is a title I've always admired. He has won the Arab Book Award and the Lambda Literary Award. Anissa is an award-winning cook and cookbook author. She is the author of half a dozen books: Sweet Middle East, Levant, Offal, the Fifth Quarter. I love that there's a whole book devoted to cooking offal. Modern Mezze, savory baking from the Mediterranean street food, Cafe Morocco, Lebanese cuisine, and this amazing book, Feast, which celebrates special event foods from all over the Muslim world, from China to North Africa. I thought we'd begin by talking a little bit about Beirut, where you both come from, and what's going on there, and how are your folks that you're in touch with there?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I was there about a month ago, and my folks are okay, but lots of my friends have lost their businesses or their houses. Actually, and the city is in a state that is very strange, kind of, in a sort of limbo. People don't know, they're kind of feeling depressed. They don't know what the future holds. Everything has kind of practically changed overnight. I mean, the economic situation was bad before the explosion, and there was the revolution before that. But the explosion seemed to have blown away the fantasy of Beirut being this kind of vibrant, exciting city where everybody, well, those privileged ones, lived a great life. So it was, I've always had a love-hate relationship with the city, and I left it nearly 50 years ago.
That happens with places that you've grown up. You go back and you're like, this does not feel the same, or it does feel the same.
Well, it feels the same and it doesn't. I never felt that I belonged, even when I lived there, and I've always wanted to leave. I mean, from when I started reading and becoming sort of more conscious of my surroundings. But being a native, I mean, being Lebanese, you're attached to your home country. I mean, you don't lose that sort of sense of belonging, even if you don't belong anymore.
And you carry it with you in your cooking and in your life. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because she claims that she's, in some ways over Beirut, but I know no one who is basically keeping the history of Lebanon better than she is, and she does it in terms of food. What region, what cooking comes from what region, and all this requires a certain kind of love and devotion. So it's always fun.
Yeah, and Rabih, I noticed that you often will return to Beirut in your novels, but you don't stay there. You like?
I actually do. I unlike Anissa, I haven't been to Beirut since the holidays, so basically January, and this is the longest I've been away ever. So I tend to go often, and most of the time I spend between 2 to 3 weeks, but I do it about 3 times a year. My family is all there. And I, like Anissa, I am ambivalent. I never felt that I belonged there. But one of the things that I noticed for me is that I really never felt I belonged here either. So it's not a Lebanon per se. I think both Anissa and I have sort of a spirit of we're just independent. The place where we are does not contain us.
Basically outsiders, but happy or contented outsiders. Not, I mean, most of my Lebanese friends abroad, they're not happy about like the English not being very friendly or the French being xenophobic or the Italians. Well, the Italians are very similar to how we are. But I'm very happy to be an outsider, the same with Rabia. And in fact, I value this position because it allows me to be free.
And I think that's part of the thing that I found interesting is that when Anissa talks about that she never felt at home there, a lot of it has to do with being intelligent and an intelligent woman. So that the lovely thing about Lebanese culture is that it's all encompassing. The horrible thing about Lebanese culture is that it's all encompassing.
Suffocate.
It can either suffocate, and lots of people grow through this. But for those of us who are independent, who I knew I was not going to follow any of the traditions, so I was going to be out of there as soon as possible. So again, whether it's because you're an independent woman or an independent gay man or whatever, we never felt that we fit in. But we were also, even I've always said that even black sheep are sheep. That no matter how far we go, we're still Lebanese. And if you ask me whether I've been in the US since 1977. So when I was 17, I arrived here. And if you ask me, am I Lebanese or American, I usually say, I'm both. But if you really force me to choose, I'm Lebanese.
Yeah, I never say I'm British. I always say I'm Lebanese Syrian. Yeah. It doesn't even occur to me to say I'm British.
Yeah, even though we really have ambivalent feelings toward our home country.
Yeah, but as I said, it's like you were born and brought up there. I left a bit later than you. I left at 21. And that sense of, I think that it's the roots, basically, that we haven't lost our roots. And I think that's very important. Even if we don't like them, we're anchored in our country, home country, which I think is actually valuable regardless of whether we like it or not, or want to live there. I would never go back to live in Lebanon. Absolutely not.
I haven't said completely not yet, but most likely not.
Is it in part because of the way that Lebanon has been shaped by colonial influence, the presence of the French, or it's
no, it's part of the Lebanese.
Yeah, it's difficult to explain. One of the primary things that when I go to Lebanon, and that's what I love about it. you know, I can't be independent. I mean, I remember my mom has two sisters, and they're all in, you know, in their 80s or close to, and they're all widows, and they talk every morning. And I remember when I go down, the conversation in the morning, you know, my mom would go, "Well, yes, he did have a bowel movement this morning, so that's good." they My private life is not private in Lebanon. There is no such thing. You know, cousins come into the house, they go into your kitchen, they open the fridge and take whatever they want and sit with you whether you want to, or they never called. I mean, now I'm beginning to complain. But it's both lovely because you feel part of this big community, and I rarely feel alone in Lebanon as much as I do here. But at the same time, it's suffocating.
I
Um,
think I have a running joke, which is when it's impossible to go out in Lebanon and gossip in restaurants, because wherever you go, you see people you know. But the irony is that I now live in a city in Sicily where it's even worse. Like I can't walk down the street without saying hello to people I know. But it's not the same thing because I mean, I don't belong to that society. And I say hello and I don't care if I gossip about them or not. Not that I'm a great gossip, but I love the idea of not being able to talk about anybody because they might be behind you or next to you.
mhm.
Now, are you in Italy most of the time, or do you still go back to London?
I do, but now with COVID, I haven't been to London for 7 months or more actually. But normally I go back to London every 2, 3 months and I stay there. I mean, my life in London hasn't really changed. I still do everything, and I have lots of friends and stuff. But I started disliking London a few years ago, but it took me a time to decide where I would go. I mean, when I would leave London and where I would go to. And Sicily is my version of going back home without being home.
It has the small town feel without the small town people that you grew up with.
Yeah, and then the seasonality, the weather, the sea, the produce, the food is not the same. I mean, the cooking is not the same, but everything else is the same, and it's quite wonderful.
I remember a few years ago you were um, tweeting photos of these beautiful places in Sicily that could be had for a small price compared to what you would pay for real estate everywhere. Is that still the
Yeah,
case?
yeah, it is. It is. I mean, the economic situation is bad, and you can buy. I bought 10 acres for like, I don't know, $150,000, beautiful land overlooking the sea. Unfortunately, the Sicilians are really keen on kind of ripping off foreigners. So whatever I do there, I pay a little bit more than the locals, but it's fine.
Um, you, Rabih and Anissa, you've known each other how long now?
12 years.
Maybe more.
All right.
I thought it was Hakawati.
Hakawati, yeah, I came to your book launch in London because of your agent and my agent. He took me there.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't that keen on.
Oh, she was enamored with me before she met me.
We
So
became friends not because of that book launch.
It was an amazing book launch. She was throwing rose petals at me as I was going up and down.
there seems to be some
Oh,
difference in the origin story. Yes.
well, it's funny because we were talking about it. I remember that we became friends when she started cooking for me. I love people who cook for me. She reminded me that no, we became friends when I asked her for a favor and she wrote this uh, article for me, and it came out under my name even though all the information was hers. So we've had this argument going on for a long time. The I think it was the Telegraph, the
It
newspaper.
was it was my Beirut under your Beirut.
Thank
That's
you.
what it was.
They were basically, when the book comes out, you know, they do publicity things where, so this was sort of content filler. So they asked me if I would say something, answer questions about Beirut for the tourists, basically. And the weird thing for me is that I go to Beirut, like ask me where the best place to eat in Beirut, I would have no idea. It's our house. You know, I never leave my home. You know, I go, we stay with family. And so I asked Anissa if she could feel like, you know, what would you buy in Beirut? And she would have, you know, you would go to this such and such a place and buy rose petal jam at such and such a place, and you would buy orange thing. It was so fabulous, and everybody thought, you know, I know so much about food. But it was she who wrote it.
That's good. Go to the expert source.
Absolutely, absolutely. So and then she invited me for dinner. Do you remember the first one? It was an Iranian meal.
With Nicole, no?
No. It was just me. I was staying with you. No, I
Oh, I
wasn't.
made jeweled rice.
Well, you did. You were doing a recipe for either Saveur or Bon Appetit or something, that testing all these Iranian foods. So you had all this food cooked, and you know, you needed somebody to taste them.
What a great job to
It
have.
was so terrible. It was so terrible. I mean, we're talking not one dish, but about 7 or 8. And, you know, 7 or 8 side dishes, 7 or 8 desserts, you know, and I had to suffer through an evening of just going like, oh, okay, I have to taste this. Oh, okay.
Sounds.
Then I cooked a Moroccan meal for you and Nicole. I remember.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And didn't Anissa do a meal at your house one time?
Oh,
Or
yes.
tell about that.
Oh, can we talk about what happened at that meal?
Yes, well, but not naming names. Can't name names. But
It's just
first of all, she promised to cook for 10 people at my house. So I thought, you know, what an amazing thing, my friends and stuff. But different friends got involved, and they decided that, you know, she had to have important people come, not just anybody. So they invited some of the restaurant owners and a chef and everything. But the best thing that happened was she comes into my apartment, walks into the kitchen, looks at it, looks at me and goes, I'm not cooking here, and walks out. So we had to find her William, who another friend of mine who had a better kitchen, and he cooked for her. She cooked there with two sous chefs. Two sous chefs, one sous chef who is the head chef at Chez Panisse, was, you know, working under her.
Well, actually, Amy and I cook very well together. So she wasn't cooking. I mean, she was cooking my recipes, but we were cooking together. But William,
and it sounds much better if you say this. My sous chef was the head chef at Chez Panisse.
But William, poor William, he wanted to cook, but we didn't let him because I didn't trust his cooking. So I just made him chop things and prepare. But it was a fun dinner, except for one guest.
Yes, she had a problem with one guest. We will not name names now, but you know, afterwards you can call and I'll tell you who.
All right. What kind of problem was it exactly? Like
It was very obnoxious.
Attitude. I mean, and I agree with Anissa. The one thing that was terrible was that person never said thank you.
That's what happens when you invite important people.
Exactly. You know, and an hour and a half late, and you know.
And then that horrible little dog.
Don't mention that. Yes.
And
the plastic surgery. But yes, go ahead.
You recently, within the past couple of years, have done a trip together to Iran.
Yes.
Speaking of things that might have stories behind them. How did that go? How did it start? Where was Anissa? You are putting together a television show on Iranian cooking.
No, I was putting together a culinary tour. But actually, we were discussing basically. Rabia wanted to write something about me, and we were discussing how to do it. And I said the best way to do it is to travel together, or maybe Rabia, did you say it or did I say it?
I think so. I thought the best thing would be to go to both Beirut and then Iran.
So we did, and actually it was a fabulous trip, except that one day I made Rabia hang around for a whole morning. I mean, as much as Rabia is passionate about food, he's not passionate like I am, at least not about the making of it. And we were in Yazd, which is a fascinating city. And I found this pastry maker who was making, not cotton candy. I forgot the name in it. Candy floss, a kind of candy floss, Iranian candy floss. Absolutely fascinating. So I thought I'd go in for a bit, and then I got completely taken up by what they were doing. And Rabia was saying in the background, "Come on, have you finished? Are you, I was filming, I was taking photos and talking to the guys." And Rabia was getting more and more impatient until
after half an hour had passed. Yes, I was getting impatient.
but it was fun.
Well, the amazing thing about the trip was that, neither one of us killed the other by the end. We're talking two divas traveling together, and each of us have our own, used to getting our own way and how this is how it's supposed to be done and stuff. And we did not kill each other. And we did not kill any Iranians either. We allowed them to be. We corrected their behavior many, many times. You're not supposed to do this. But for the most part, no, it was absolutely lovely. A lovely, lovely trip.
How long were you there?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I had been on a trip. I mean, food is really important to me, and it was, it's a big deal on every trip, but I had never been on a trip where it was almost all about food, trying this at this place, trying this at that place. And then the other thing that is stunning is, I've done a similar trip to China, but the amazing thing is that how diverse and amazing Iranian cuisine is. That, we'd go to one place and they cook at one town and they cook a certain way, and to find out the difference in another town or another area was just incredible.
And then we were really very fortunate to be in Yazd during Ashura, which is the kind of commemoration of the martyrdom of Hussein. And it's like a 2 or 3 day celebration with lots of, lots and lots of food, but also lots of kind of sadness and tragedy and flagellation. Well, not for real, not anymore. And we sat with, do you remember when we sat with the Imam?
Oh God, yes. And you were making fun of me the whole time. We sat next to a cleric who was very handsome and who spoke Arabic fluently. And Anissa was thinking that he's trying to convert me. Neither Anissa nor I are Muslim, so he's trying to convert me to Islam. And I tried to explain to her, no, I'm trying to convert him to homosexuality. And all this during Ashura, so yes.
Elizabeth Gage has a question in the chat. In Aden, did you eat in restaurants or in people's homes?
We did both. In Iran, we had a wonderful meal at the lady who organized our trip, and her mother was a really good cook, actually, and very organized cook.
Mm-hmm.
And she made an incredible, I mean, we were only the two of us, and then them, three, the mother, the daughter, and the father. And the meal was just spectacular. And I don't know, 2 or 3 different rices. And
what was the dessert, the saffron dessert?
oh, the cholesard. I have
Yeah.
to get some water. Excuse me for a minute.
But also, so yes, we ate in a lot of people's houses. We ate in restaurants. And, you know, again, as usual, my favorite things were always the little things. I'm trying to remember what town it was, somewhere in the desert, where I had probably the best ice cream I've ever had, which was
That was amazing.
amazing. Where was it?
In Kashan.
Kashan.
Incredible.
Yeah. And
The best saffron ice cream ever.
yeah. And you know, it just was impeccable. She had it like maybe 4 times, including for breakfast. For breakfast, she went over there and made them open the store for her for breakfast.
They were happy to do that.
Oh my God, yes.
It's a very healthy breakfast. It's got cream in it.
It's got, yeah, exactly.
It's basically,
It'll definitely pick you up.
I made it in Sicily, but not as I haven't yet made it as well as them. Their ice cream, they use this kind of dried powdered orchid tubers to thicken the ice cream. And so it has a very stretchy, chewy texture, and you know, like you pick it up with a spoon and it stretches for, you know, quite a bit. And the flavor of saffron and rose water was just divine.
And pistachios.
And pistachios.
There's not that many, but you know, it's like that. That's what I liked. It's not overpowering. It's just a few pistachios. And you know, again, that whole sort of stretchy thing where you see now I'm beginning to salivate. You take the spoon, as you take the spoon, the ice cream stretches with the spoon.
it sounds delightful.
It is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Like I said, she had it 4 times. 4 times.
Well, you have to taste it. You have to taste it to be able to replicate the recipe.
That's what she said. I said, we've had this once. She goes, no, we have to make sure.
And he said, how does a cookbook begin for you? First of all, like how did the first one start? Because you didn't start out writing cookbooks.
No, not at all. I mean, I was in the art world for 20 years. It came by sheer chance, basically. I had taken on a literary agent to write about collecting, the way I did, with little money, but interesting kind of, you know, for, you know, buying things that were not trendy or not very desirable, and foreseeing, you know, trends, basically. And then she introduced me to a Lebanese friend, and they started talking about cookbooks. And as I was listening to them, I was thinking, there isn't a Lebanese cookbook which is user-friendly for those who don't know the cuisine. So I just threw it like this, and I said, oh, maybe I should write a book on Lebanese cuisine, knowing nothing about cookbooks, not even having an appreciation of cookbooks as a kind of literary genre, or as, you know, I thought of them as manuals. I didn't even have that many. But I did have a boyfriend at the time who had a big collection of cookbooks and who was a fabulous cook. And I cooked. I loved food, of course, and I cooked quite well. So I just said that, and thinking that I would take the recipes from my mother, who's a great cook. And then as I was developing the idea, I was thinking that it would be a great book for all those young Lebanese who were displaced by the war. So I kind of, you know, my agent introduced, it was lucky she had a publisher who was looking for somebody to write a book about Lebanese food. And then she introduced me to lots of really great food writers and food people. And I acquired a few mentors, and then my boyfriend helped. And then I went to the British Library and I read a lot, and I started buying cookbooks, and I got into it.
And then the next thing you know, you're on Martha Stewart and you're world famous. So the first cookbook really started out as a kind of gift to displaced Lebanese to say, here's a way to carry some of Beirut, some of Lebanon with you. And you started working with your mother's recipes and then brought in other experts or?
No, I mean, I brought in experts to learn about how to write about food because I didn't know anything about it. And so I got, about 4 or 5 mentors from doing different things just to understand a bit about food writing. And then my agent helped a lot because she was the daughter of Alan Davidson, who's one of the great sort of food people in England. But the success of the book, like Rabia can tell you, is that Rabia asked his friend William, who's a very good cook, to cook him Lebanese food from my book. He had never eaten Lebanese nor cooked Lebanese. And Rabia found the taste of home in the recipes that he cooked from my book. Right, Rabia?
Mm-hmm. And this is what I mean by it's not about as much as, yes, it's a gift to all those outside, outside of Lebanon. Because again, William made a meal that my mother could have made, and he had no idea what Lebanese food was supposed to eat. But by reading the recipe and him being a good cook, he followed the recipe. He was able to come up with that. But this what brings me. What I think Anissa does is not necessarily write cookbooks. I call it, for lack of a better word, a food historian.
Yeah.
She's preserving these Lebanese
Traditions.
so that 100 years from now, when Lebanese cooking would have changed completely, somebody could take that book and recreate a dish is usually served by everybody in Lebanon. So, and then she did it with different other things. So I think a good cookbook writer is more than just here's a recipe, do it. It's about preservation. It's about preservation of culture, who we are as people, because for me, you are what you eat.
And very much when we celebrate holidays, or when we get together with friends or family, we love to do special stuff for them. And so, to have cookbooks that center special dishes that ordinary people can make, I think is really a treat.
And again, I mean, we're close to Thanksgiving. I didn't grow up in this country, so for me, the Thanksgiving traditions are not much. Like really, you couldn't come up with anything better than turkey to cook. It's like I mean, if you want a good meal, lamb, or a good pasta or something. But when I watch my friends and how much they enjoy it and what it means to them, it becomes more than just the food. Now, again, for somebody like me, who, I'm from Lebanon and food is of primary importance, we would have come up something better than turkey.
Absolutely. And pumpkin pie.
It's really lovely to see, people going crazy over pumpkin pie. It brings, like, one bite brings back so much memory. And for me, this is what I mean by preserving culture. I'll tell the story that is, from that same dinner. She made to me, and she didn't know, but she made my father's favorite meal. We call it peasant food. It's birghul bitfini. It's basically bulgur wheat with a leg of lamb, and it's peasant food. And my father used to love it, but she served it to these chefs as if it's like as if you're going to French Laundry or Chez Panisse, and it was wonderful to see that, our regular food is exceptional. Same thing that happened to me in Iran, that, this is people's food. but it was divine, better than anything you'd eat in a French restaurant, I mean, some French restaurants. The other thing that happened was, I remember she made what we call tabbouleh baida, which I've never had. Instead of the parsley, you make it with cabbage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've never had it. But with one bite, I remember I was standing up and I had this bite and it hit me like this was both completely strange. I've never had it before, but was as if I've had it all my life. So all these memories come up. And I was standing like this going, and this chef, Zaborni, was looking at me and goes, he said, food has that effect on us, darling. He was like, yeah, yeah.
Anissa, what's the one food that you think of when you think of special occasions? What's the thing that you're most proud of?
Well, different foods, but on the savory side, I would make kibbeh bisaniye, which is a kind of like meat pie without any crust, with a great filling with pine nuts, mincemeat, and onions. And it's flavored, subtly flavored, but with different spices. And it's very, very beautiful to look at because you decorate it. And I mean, I spent hours decorating it and making, geometric patterns in the meat mixture. It's basically lamb and bulgur wheat, but, very smooth. And on the sweet side, it's mamoul, which is basically, I call it cookie, but it's not really a cookie. It's short crust with a filling of nuts or dates inside them, and stamped in very beautiful special stamps, like moon cakes, but thinner and more delicate. Both take forever to make, and I don't make them that, often. But they're very, they also bring back memories. Like the mamoul brings back memories of Easter, because my mother made like hundreds for Easter, but the Muslims do them during Ramadan and for Eid. And kibbeh bisani has always been a special dish. It's not like an everyday dish. So it would be for the weekend if the family comes, or for, guests. And when I have people for dinner and I feel like spending time cooking for them, I would make kibbeh bisani.
Rabih, do you have any
Of course.
foods?
But both of what of course, it's like, are you kidding? Both of the things that she loved, I do as well. And it's funny because there was this one time where I was coming to the United States, coming back from Beirut during the war, and my mother, without telling me, stuffs a whole tray of kibbeh in the bottom of my bag. So I come over here and they asked me, do you have anything to declare? And I said, no. And, I had a Lebanese passport then. So, of course, they send me to check, and they open and they look at this. And I tried to explain them. Luckily, the guy, the customs official, was Jewish. He goes, are Lebanese mothers like Jewish mothers? I said, yes. He goes, go on. So anyway, no, I would use, for me, it's wara anab.
Delicious.
It's and that takes hours and hours and hours. And I've always said that, unfortunately, and God bless them, but the Greeks ruined dolmas for the rest of the world. I mean, what you have in various things, like nothing. For me, the only grapevines I like are the Lebanese and maybe the Iranians, because I found out that the Iranians make it with sour grapes, which would be divine.
And also with pomegranate syrup.
Pomegranate syrup, I love that too.
And the Turks, I mean, in some parts of Turkey, they make very good stuffed vine leaves.
The other, which would be really weird, but it's because we had it at feasts. Like when you want to treat somebody, you make ghammi.
I love that.
And it's like I haven't had it maybe in 8 or 9 years, maybe 10 years, but it's basically, how do you describe it, darling? It's the intestines and the stomach of
Yeah,
lamb.
you make pouches with tripe, and you fill them with rice, meat, a mixture of rice, meat, and chickpeas and tomatoes. In our case, I don't know if in your family they put
Not as
tomatoes.
much, no.
And then the intestines as well. So basically, they're like long sausages, and then you cook them with the feet, all lamb, and sometimes they also add the head. It's very rich, and the broth in which the sausages and the pouches, the tripe pouches, cook,
Make it soup.
are then mixed with lemon juice and garlic and served like a juice on the side. It's one of the best things ever. But now that my mother is so old, I don't dare ask her to make it. But I often asked her to make it, when I went back to Beirut. And I made it for my blog one day, and I called it edible haute couture, because you spend hours like sewing the tripe and keep. Actually, I didn't do the intestines in London,
Well,
but it is an extraordinary dish.
it is. And then for dessert, I also really I like the ma'moul with walnuts much more than the dates. But I also love what we call ataif ba'ashta, which is these little small pancakes with clotted cream. I have a fondness for our clotted cream. I could eat it all day, every day.
Clotted cream is amazing.
Amazing, 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 amazing.
I used to take my nieces to tea at Mrs. Lovejoy's, and my youngest niece could just eat a plate of clotted cream and lemon curd. That was all she wanted.
Should we tell them, darling? Should we tell them? That trip, we also we went to Istanbul first in Turkey, because we both worked with Syrian refugees. So there's this school for Syrian refugees. But every morning we used to have clotted cream for breakfast. And we were taken
in Turkey, it's the best.
Yeah, we were taken to this restaurant that apparently, and it was for breakfast, specialized in clotted cream. And buffalo clotted cream, yes. And they make them in these huge rolls, like this, and they cut you a slice. We had a slice, she and I. We noticed that this other table, they had the entire roll delivered to their table. So Anissa went back and got the entire roll.
Why not? Why not?
Absolutely, absolutely. She went back. I wasn't there, or I would have gone with her. She went back by herself.
Yeah, it's one of the best breakfasts ever, with knefe, I have to say. Knefe, which is a kind of sweet cheese pie drenched in syrup, and it's it's an amazing thing to have in the morning.
I want to give time for our attendees to ask questions. If folks have questions, feel free to type the question in the chat and I'll call on you, or you can just raise your hand, actually. And while we wait, can we hear a little bit about what you guys are working on now? Rabih, do you have a new novel in the works?
I have one, it's done. It comes out in fall of 2021. It's called The Wrong End of the Telescope. And it's about, working with Syrian refugees.
Awesome. Is it inspired by recent events?
It was. I actually, I've worked with Syrian refugees. The first time that I did, I went with Anissa because, she was writing a story and she dragged me along. That was about 5 or 6 years ago, at the beginning of the events. But I've interviewed quite a few, and then when they had the crisis in Lesbos in 2016. I went to Lesbos, and it was overwhelming, to put it mildly.
I imagine. I remember the images on the news, but I'm sure it must be an entirely different thing to be there.
Oh, it was. Oh, I mean, again, part of the story of the book is, the one of the characters has a nervous breakdown. But I'm not saying it's me. But yes, it was.
And Anissa, you were there as well, working with the refugees?
I wrote that first piece. I wanted to write about the risk of losing culinary lore, with the displacement of so many Syrians. And it happened that we were both in Beirut. And in fact, Rabia, you were reluctant to start with, if
Right.
you remember correctly. You didn't want to come with me.
And I was terrified, when we first went, because, you started just talking to people, and I sat in the corner like, oh my God, how could you do this? It took a while, but I also wrote a story at that time.
Because you went again. I met one of the people. I mean, the heroine of my article was a woman who ran a group of refugees who had taken over an empty shopping mall in the north, in Tripoli, and each one of them had a room. And this woman, when I got in touch with her, I offered to bring food with me. And I said, I can buy like a whole lamb, because I didn't know how big that group of refugees were. But I thought, I would take some food with me, and they would cook it, and we would talk and everything. And she refused absolutely. She just said, no, come and have lunch with me. And that's when I realized how little they had. Like, they were in this big empty building. Each one had a room. And most of them lived in, good houses in Syria. They were, like middle-class people, or a bit less, middle class, but kind of normal. And she was living in this one room with her daughter and son. And in that room, they had made a kitchen, they had a bathroom and their living room and their sleeping. And she invited me to lunch, very simple lunch, but absolutely exquisite. She made hummus, fried potatoes, and fattoush, and something else. And she explained to me how the World Food Program worked. Each one of them had $30 a month for their groceries, for their food. And she started at the beginning of the month, they could buy a little bit of meat, and then of course they couldn't anymore. But the most important thing for them was to have tea and sugar to offer the guests. And every single refugee I visited on, researching this article, they had the most extraordinary hospitality. They would offer me whatever they had in their house, apart from tea, sweet tea, but, like either halabi, which is a kind of milk custard, or this woman inviting me to lunch, or whatever they had, they shared with me. And it was an extraordinary experience. Absolutely wonderful people.
I had similar things. I've interviewed over 200 to 300 people, and I always joke that I became diabetic after that, because they sweeten their tea so much. It's like, oh my God. But I also did some research, and it turned out that I went to the supermarket in Zahle, where all the refugees go, and I asked, what is the number one thing that is bought? And it's sugar and tea, because the guests, serving guests is much more important to them than actually eating themselves, which I found fascinating.
That's incredible. And how moving.
What is the name of the clotted cream in Arabic? It's ashta.
Ashta. And kaymak in Turkey.
Kaymak in Turkey, ashta.
And pash, I forgot the name in Iran.
In Iranian, kamak, but it's with a K.
I don't remember.
Susan told me again, and I remembered as soon as she told me, now I've forgotten again.
You're having a senior moment.
I'm having many senior.
Only you.
I'm having a senior life, darling. No longer just a moment.
Well, it's good of you to even remember the names. So many times when I'm traveling, I just point at things and say, you know, I know what I call it. Hopefully it's the same. How has the refugee problem changed in the past couple of years? Has it gotten better or?
No, it's gotten a lot worse. And, you know, that was part of, again, this is a writing problem, but part of the problem is that I said the story in 2006, where Europe was still somewhat open to refugees. They were getting a lot of trouble and stuff, but for the most part, it was still relatively open. I mean, that was a few months after the boy Alan Kurdi was found on the beach. So Europe opened its door for a little bit.
You mean 2016?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sorry, in 2016. So my novelist said then, and I kept wondering, you know, like, how do you explain that this was a short period where actually things, as bad as they looked on the page, are going to get a lot worse. There was a big fire about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, where, you know, so many people died at Moria. They're returning people against their will to be killed, basically, you know.
Oh, they're letting people die in the Mediterranean as well.
They're letting people die in the Mediterranean. It's gotten a lot worse. Again, with the rise of various, and in Europe, similar to here, a lot of the rise of the Nazis, you know, I mean, Trump came into power because he was anti-immigrant. In Europe,
happened because of an anti-immigrant feeling as well.
Yeah, so a lot of the Nazi forces came into power in Poland, in Hungary, basically being anti-Syrian refugees. I mean, they would make no bones about it. You know, they were closing. So all of a sudden, it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then, but the trouble was that people weren't stopping to come in. You know, they kept on trying to come in. So it's a big problem.
Well, if you have no place to go back to that's safe, you try anything you can. And it's heartbreaking to see governments turn people away when, you know, most of us are here for the grace of someone having let our parents or great grandparents or grandparents.
No, and then, you know, as Anissa will testify, like going to that school in Istanbul and seeing the kids, she taught them how to cook. I just taught them, you know, about writing. But they're so wonderful and earnest and cute and lovely and just adorable. And I keep thinking, and you don't want these people to come in? It's like, what's the matter with you?
And so kind of willing to work or to learn. I mean, they had a beautiful attitude.
Mm-hmm. I always joke that I've never had a class that paid attention as much as they did. They were like, just like, huh?
It's true. No, I love teaching them how to cook. They were adorable. And then I cooked with the mothers, and that was a great experience as well. You were there, no?
Mm-hmm.
When
well,
I cooked with the mothers.
I got to eat the result.
Anissa, what is your latest project? Have you?
I am still mulling over what I'm going to work on next. I'm actually not working these days.
Well, you deserve some time off. I mean, my God, you've produced so much over the years, and you're
and
always
that book was so big.
Don't be like my mother. The first thing my mother said when I gave her the copy of Feast, she said, why did you have to write a book so big? And I said, Mom, instead of being impressed, you have to criticize immediately.
Of course.
Oh, moms.
Yeah.
Rabih, Elizabeth Gage wants to know, do you cook Lebanese food for yourself?
No. I actually,
I don't know how to cook.
the reason, like I said, the reason Anissa and I are friends is because she cooks for me. So no, I don't cook.
I remember going to a dinner party at your house one time, and I thought, oh, great, Rabih's cooked. And it was all stuff that you had ordered.
No, I didn't order. I have somebody who Anissa found for me. Yeah, and he loves doing dinner parties because it's and I love it because it's relatively inexpensive. He charges by the hour, so it doesn't matter whether it's like cooking for 10 or cooking for 20. But yes, no, he does my dinner parties.
And he's a very good chef.
He's a very good chef.
It's wonderful food.
Yeah. And it's funny, like I said, because I'm now, because of the financial problems and in Lebanon and so forth, I don't have that much money, but I still pay somebody to cook for me because that's like in my life, this is essential.
Yeah. Food is what sustains us.
Mm-hmm.
And art. And I feel like, if you can live a life where you have both, you are twice blessed.
Yeah.
It's true.
We are already at time. I wanted to just solicit from you your thoughts for the coming year, anything that you want to send out to people in terms of instructions, blessings, things to remember.
Well, all I can say is, for me, may your next year be filled with food and books.
Mm-hmm. And may the next year be under Biden as a president, and that we get rid of Donald Trump.
And may Donald Trump end up someplace pertinent.
No, I'll say it. I wish he really suffers. So, it's like, I don't want a quick death, but suffering would be good. Suffering in jail would be much, much better. Really suffering, and his entire family, from Ivanka to Eric to whatever,
The feed them the worst food ever.
Yes. We had we had something that we did. What would we serve the Lebanese leaders in prison? What would we serve, Trump in prison and all that?
You can't punish Trump by serving him bad food, because he already does that to himself.
But I'd give him really bitter food. I mean, not junk food, but absolutely vile concoctions.
And she has recipes for those.
All right. Thank you guys so much for visiting us and welcoming us with your stories and your history. And I love your friendship. I want to go on the next trip. Next time you're going to Iran.
Well, let's start hoping that next year we'll be able to travel.
Exactly.
Yes. All right. Lots of love. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug. Lots of love back.
Bye, guys.
Bye.